George. Welcome to the Your Dose podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Very early in the UK at the moment. What time is it there?
It's just gone 7:36 in the morning.
Wow, I'm honoured that you've joined me at 7:36
Don't
in the
worry.
morning to have a chat with me. Thank you so much, George. I think I can tell from your accent, George, but whereabouts in the world are you for the listeners?
Yes, so I'm down in Cardiff at the moment, Cardiff Bay. So I was quite disappointed actually this morning because usually where I am, you've got the sort of sunrise will come straight over the river and you get this fantastic, almost pre-noon
Wow.
golden hour. But this morning, the British summertime seems to have taken a halt. So there's none of that this morning. So you've just got my spotlighted lighted face rather than a sort of nice golden hour one. But I guess if it's
Oh,
I
well,
guess if it's a podcast,
still
people
look
don't
great.
really. Oh, thank you so much. That's it
Still
now.
look great, George.
Can finish it now. My ego's
Well,
fueled.
it's well, it's nice here in Australia, and it's
Yeah.
August, which is winter time. And it's blue skies,
Mm.
like 17, 18 degrees. It's crazy. I can't actually believe that this is Australian
I
winter
was about to
because
say
this
that's
is
like pure springtime. Like here, that would be classed as like
this
people
is
would be out
Brit
in
that
shorts and t-shirt in Britain if it was that.
it's British summertime, like 18 degrees for sure. So it's a weird one.
Which part of
Um,
Australia is it? You're in as well.
Sydney.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So
Mm.
very far away from home, but I'm coming back in December. So
Yes.
weirdly miss the UK.
Oh,
Like I
really?
miss England. I miss British pubs. I miss I miss my family. I miss my
Of
dogs. So
course.
yeah, but the weather is amazing here.
Yes. I know. I guess you can't win with everything, isn't it?
Exactly. So you're dressed for work, George. What do you do for your job? What's your
Yes,
full time job?
I am, aren't I? I work in property surveying, so it's well, the most simple way to do it is, or explain it is, if you're buying a house, I would sort of go there with my father. I'm only in training for it, by the way. Like, I don't want anyone to come to me for any advice because I'll probably give you the wrong advice. I don't want to get sued. So if you're sort of like buying a property, I sort of would go there, check it over, make sure it's like worth living in. If you need to do any sort of like reconstruction to it, sort of like make note of that. Make sure you can. You're not going to put like a loft conversion in, and then your whole house is going to end up falling down. Making sure everything's just working, and that's it really. And I would say it's quite simple, but it's one of those jobs you come across where like you can do like so many like day after day after day after day, not even bat an eyelid till you make that one tiny mistake, and that's it. There you're just screwed. So it's all about
uh,
attention to detail in this job. So it's quite it can be
and
quite
did
stressful.
you and did you have any like plans for what you wanted to do when you were younger? Like, did you expect to be doing this now?
No, I was never that sort of child who was like, oh yeah, this is going to be my dream job. I want to do this. I kind of always sort of knew in the back of my mind I was going to, since my dad's done it on his own for years, I sort of would go down that path anyway. But I was definitely never a child to be like an astronaut or a fireman or a policeman. I was just literally never even thought of that at all when I was younger.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I can't even remember what I wanted to be, but maybe a teacher.
Yeah,
But I'm definitely not doing that now. So,
there's still time
I
though.
still time. Um, right now, I still have no clue what I want to be,
Yes,
but that's okay.
that's fine.
That is okay. So, so George, obviously, we're here to have a little bit of a chat about your sort of mental health journey, I guess, and something that you speak quite a lot about on social media is sobriety.
Yes.
So, I guess maybe if we can like take it back to where this journey all began and why it began.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I'm coming up to at the end of the month. I'll be 1 year sober, which is a genuine fantastic
Wow.
achievement for myself. I say that's a thing. You know, when you go to job interviews and they usually there's that question like, "Oh, what are you most proud of? What's your best achievement?" I would say if hopefully I never have to go into any more job interviews now for my life. But if I did, that would be the sort of answer to that question. And it is a monumental achievement, especially on a personal growth level. And it started well a year ago. So I wouldn't say that I was ever an alcoholic. I've sort of never really had a big issue with alcohol, like taking a real grasp on my life. I did feel there were sort of like areas in my life that were sort of struggling because of alcohol, but not to a point where my life was being sort of debilitated by it. But it came to me, the idea of sobriety, towards the start of summer last year, and I was just a bit like, I don't know why I was really drinking as much as I was at the age of, like, I was almost like drinking the same I was when I was like 18, 19 at the age of sort of like 25. And I was just like, is there really any need for this anymore? But what I was finding was my
Yeah.
problem wasn't so much how much I was drinking on a regular basis. It was more so my lack of ability to control any sort of moderation with alcohol. That I could already go like days or a week or 2 weeks without a need to drink. But as soon as I would start drinking, that's where the problems would start because I could not stop. And I would end up getting myself into some really, really awful situations over the last couple of years. And it was last year where this sort of had like this epiphany moment where I think in my old job I
Yeah.
worked, I think it was something like, it wasn't a long time. I think it was like 10 days straight or something. It was quite like long days, just like doing like sort of like a lot of overtime to sort of make up for all the money that I sort of spent over summer. And it got to one day I had off and it was a Sunday. And I remember thinking in my mind, it's like, this Sunday is going to be the best day off anyone's ever had. I was going to get up early-ish, but still allow myself a little bit of a line, like go for a walk, go to like local cop shop, have like a breakfast there, go around, maybe go for a run, maybe go see my family, just like
Yeah.
really embrace all the hours of
Wholesome
that day.
day. Yeah.
Exactly. And I got to the Saturday, the day before, and a couple of my friends were out in Cardiff because they just, well, I think it was like a rugby game on. And they messaged me and they were like, oh, we're going to go out afterwards just for a couple of drinks. Nothing too major. Famous last words, as I'm sure we've all heard
Yeah.
before.
Literally.
It is
Just a few. Just a few.
just a few, nothing more than that. Last train home. What a lie. Your nose is grown. Pinocchio's come out to play.
Yeah.
And then all of a
Yeah,
sudden,
literally.
I got that message. I went into Cardiff and, like I just said, it wasn't just a couple of drinks and it was quite a lot of drinks. And I remember there was one point in the night and I had my pint and I just remember like drinking. I just remember looking at it thinking, I don't actually want this anymore. And it was such a weird moment because usually I'm in these mindsets. I'm like, yes, I'll down this and get another pint. I was just like, I don't want this. And but I still had it and I had quite a few more after that and after that. And the next day, then on that Sunday, where I had this, perfect day planned, I ended up waking up at 1 p.m. with a rather horrible hangover. And I just remember lying in my bed for like hours, obviously quite hungover to start with. But I just remember thinking, it was just like, this is happening way too much now. Not so much on a often regular basis, but there was times where I would have like plans and they would sort of go downhill because of the accidental alcohol misuse, which is probably one of the best ways to describe it. And I was just like, I think I'm going to stop. And my original plan was, because that was towards the end of summer, which would have been probably literally around this time last year. And I was just like, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to drink for September. I'm going to do sober September. And my idea for that was, I feel like when a lot of people do something like dry January, they restrict them. They sort of like take themselves away from anything that has to do with drinking. They'll not go down the pub. They won't go out like socially. They'll sort of like become quite introverted during that time. But I was like, no, I'm still going to go out. I'm still going to like see my friends. I can do everything normally. But I'm going to prove to myself that I can do all this without alcohol. So in the future, if I find myself in a similar situation, where I've worked quite a long time and my friends have asked to go out, I can say, yes, I'm going to go out, but I'm not going to drink because I want to savor the day after, or I've got plans, I don't want to ruin that. So I did Silver September and and then I just felt fantastic afterwards. So I was just like, I bet I can carry this on. And I didn't have any reason to drink afterwards. Like there was no social events coming up. So I was like, if I end up drinking now on say the 1st of October, I'm just doing that because I can rather
Yeah.
than I want to. So it's like I'll just like carry on being sober for as long as until I feel like I can comfortably go back to it and feel happy to do so. And then got through October then, and I was like, oh, that's 2 months. And then I was thinking, oh, I bet I could get to 100 days now. And I did get to 100 days, and that was just before
Wow.
Christmas. And then I was just like, well, I bet I can get through Christmas and New Year sober, which I did. And then all through then the rest of the year. And now I'm almost coming up to 1 year. But yeah, like
Wow.
there's no sort of, like, I always like find it funny to say that story because I feel like a lot of the time with some people is you see, especially when you see like the celebrity stories regarding it, who are like the main sort of profiles for sobriety, they have like these really sort of like damaging and heartbreaking stories of how they lost all their family, their money, their career was almost driven. and it's like, you have to feel like you have to get yourself into rock bottom before you sort of build yourself up. But I'm just like, well, you don't have to wait until everything goes to shit in order to sort of sort yourself out. You can just get to a moment, feel, oh, actually, yeah, maybe now's the time. I'll just make the change now rather than waiting until it starts to become a real
Yeah.
problem. And I think noticing when it is becoming a problem before it's actually turned into a problem is a much better time to take action rather than waiting for the problem to develop further. And that's where I am
And
today.
well done. That's
Oh, thank
amazing.
you.
I would like to say that I'm 1 year sober, but I'm
Oh,
not.
fun. Oh.
I definitely have a better relationship with alcohol than I used to have. And I can really like relate to a lot of what you said. And I think I've definitely, even recently, but over the past year, I would say more than ever,
Yeah.
I've been in like a club or a bar or I don't know, in a social
Yeah.
situation, and I've been drinking and I've been thinking, I actually just want to go to bed, to be honest.
It's the joys of
I
getting
was in
older.
Yeah, and I was in Bali recently, and
Mm,
I met some really great people, and they were a bit younger than me, and we were out for a few drinks, and I like having a few drinks, like
of
I like having
course.
a few drinks and like socializing with people, and that part we had dinner, and then they were like, should we go out? And I was thinking, oh, I don't really want to go out, like very young here,
Yeah.
and it felt like Magaluf or something, the
Oh
place that
no,
I was
really.
in, the strip that I was in, Bali. And we went, but old Emily would like literally thrive on that,
Mm.
to be honest. Even like 3 4 years ago, like I love a party, love a dance. And I got into this club and I was just like, I looked around and I was like, I'm going home, guys. And I just put my drink down and I got into bed, and the next day I had no hangover, and I was like, oh my God, like this is incredible.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's like it's no if you do want to continue drinking, it's knowing when to stop. That's powerful as well.
That is.
Um, but that's difficult, and I think like but going like completely sober is just such like for somebody who's like you said who's not an alcoholic but loves a drink, that's a huge milestone. um so I've got a few questions. The first one being like, were there any moments over the past year where you've wanted a drink, and is there any specific moment where that's happened, and how did you deal with it?
Easy answer, no. I generally haven't. And it's been like not even once. Like I've not been out in like some really
What?
nice places. Yeah,
Seriously?
not once at all. And I don't know why. Like because I've been to like some nice like restaurants, where they got like a great list of like. Because I've never been a wine drinker, but they got like really nice cocktails and really nice beer and all this, and like and especially when the summertime was out as well. And you're sitting in the sun and like nothing should feel better than a nice cold pint, with like the condensation dripping down, like the head just right on the
Yeah,
pint. But
yeah.
not once. Like there were no, actually, I'd be lying if I said yeah. There generally hasn't been a single time where I would feel I had like a sort of urge inside of me that I was just like, yes, I
Wow.
really should have a drink, which I think is fantastic. And I'm like surprised myself when I say this as well, because not even from day one, like there's been nothing.
That's crazy. And your friends, like obviously you sounds like you've got a bit of a guy group going on. You like going to the watch the rugby and very much like friends that like to go to the
Yes,
pub. How did they deal with that? Like, were they supportive
fantastic, and
whilst
I
you not drinking? Wow.
absolutely. Like I'm very, very lucky with like the friends I have. And I think that plays a big part in the sort of reason why I've stuck to it for so long and not really had a need for a drink is because I think they sort of subconsciously or indirectly knew that it was time for me to sort of make that choice with alcohol, because I think a lot of when we were out and I was like, really almost fully sending it with the booze, they were sort of the ones who I would have to look after me and sort of like guide me, like take me home. So it's taking a lot of pressure off them. So I think they were very happy that I wasn't drinking, more so because there was less work for them to do rather than my personal growth.
Wow.
But like I was like I remember as well. one of my friends. It was pretty much this time last year. I sort of decided I was going to go sober for September, but it was my friend's birthday in London in the 1st of September. And we were all going out for that in London. And I remember debating in my mind, thinking, should I drink for this event? Because in my mind, I was like, technically, it's a loophole because I already agreed to go out and have a few drinks before I decided to go sober. And I was just like,
Yes.
oh, maybe I could get out of this. I remember saying to a few of my friends, and a few of them were like 50-50. It's like, well, yeah, I guess so, but like, blah, blah, blah. And I remember one of my friends, and I went to her and I was just like, oh, should I? Shouldn't I? And she was just like, well, you would have failed already if you drink on the 1st of September. And I remember thinking, yes, this is the answer I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so I didn't.
Yeah.
And then I do believe if it wasn't for her to say that, and I say it to her quite a lot, if she didn't say that, I probably would have ended up drinking. I probably wouldn't have stuck to it. So I think that sort of moment has stuck. But definitely, like, not well. I'm not quite a lot of my friends anyway. They're not sort of big drinkers, I would say. I mean, they do enjoy a drink, but they're more sort of drinking for the occasion rather than sort of just drinking for the sake of it. Like, if there's not a reason to go out on the weekend and sink a few pints, they're probably not going to do that. And they sort of like to go out and do different things rather than just sort of sit in a pub, rather go for a walk, go, if it's nice weather, just go sit in the park and go to Tesco and have a sort of a Tesco meal deal tapas in the middle of Butte Park in Cardiff. So it's quite nice. I sort of had that sort of link to be able to go out and not link it all with alcohol. But I would say the network community, or yeah, my friends and family specifically, that's been, I say, 90% of the reason why I've stuck to it for so long.
And you mentioned that before you used to get yourself into some quite bad situations.
Yes.
So, I mean, is there anything in particular that you could share or like give a bit more insight into what that actually means? Because there might be someone listening who maybe doesn't think that they have a big problem with alcohol, but maybe they're doing some of the things that you were doing, and that might highlight that maybe they do have a bit more of an issue than they think they do.
Yes, no, I've never even thought of it. I mean, there's been so many. That's the worst part. But one of my worst ones was I got this scar on my arm. I don't know if you can see it as I zoom it. I probably can't really see it there.
Yeah.
But that was done quite a while ago, after about a year and a half ago. So it was a night out in Cardiff, and I sort of came back, and my friend lives in like an apartment just not too far from mine. But there's like this sort of like passage you can get to quite easily from mine to his, and it's like all fenced off because they're doing like works to the pavement or something. I think they were, and I remember in my mind thinking, oh, I'm just gonna climb over. I'll sort of get it all sorted, and I'll just get into bed, nice and easy and early. And then I sort of went to jump the fence, and it was one of those sort of wide fences, and one of like the not the pokes, the spikes were sticking out. And I sort of like jumped up, my hand slipped, and then it just went straight into my arm. I know, sorry if that's a bit too much information there, but
Oh,
at the time, because I didn't really sort of realize it, so I sort of like obviously must have held my hand over it or something. I got it back up to bed, and like I was so out of it, I just sort of went to bed and forgot about it. I woke up the next day, and I like was so scared because I woke up in my bed and it was just like caked in blood, and I was just like, what have I done? And I was just like, this is bad. I remember like everything was like racing off in my mind. It's like, have I
oh my
killed?
God.
And I was just like, what have I done? What have I done? Like, expecting, like some sort of like Godfather sort of scene, like opening like my bed, like be like a decapitated horse head in there or something. But luckily, I figured out it was only my arm, so it wasn't too bad. But then that was just like disgusting. And I was just there, and I was one of those moments. I remember like sitting up in my bed, and it was just like I hope no one was like looking through a window or anything. So I was just like sitting up in bed, looking so like sad, like this bed covered in blood. And I was just like, it was one of those moments. I was just like, and that should have been the moment actually, really, that like sort of spurred me on to go sober. That wasn't a moment. I thought, oh well, I guess things like this happen. And but there were so many others. I think one of the worst ones I was really really bad at was more so like the drunk texting and messaging. And I used to say some really bad things to people, and I really regret some of the stuff that I would say. But like,
Really?
yeah, like I was really, really bad for it, and it wasn't so much um malicious. There were a few things that I said which were bad, and I'm like really regretful of the things I said. But it was more so like I was just like I, I don't know how to explain it really, but I would be someone I'd like sort of like be out of my mind. I'll go on my phone, go on Instagram, and I'd just be like replying to like everyone's sort of stories, and I'd be saying all sorts of shit to it, and not even stuff that makes sense. And I'd be like, oh, and I'd like say to people that I've not seen in years, like my old friends, like, oh yeah, we need to meet up, we need to do this, or we need to do that, and I'd like end up having to cancel so many plans with people because I would just
Oh, it's
forget
the
that
worst.
I'd be like, oh, and then
I
like
mean, I've yeah, I mean, I've made so many. I actually cringe so bad thinking about the amount of girls that I've spoken to in a toilet or like just out somewhere, and
mm,
they've been like my best friend after like 2 minutes, and
yes,
they're coming on holiday with me, and like no, I can't actually think about it because it's so fake, isn't it? I mean, it's fun at the time, and
oh,
like,
of
look,
course,
it's like it's all a bit of fun, and it's there's no like bad intent, but it's just like it is cringe, and like I've been the same when I'm drunk. I'll be like commenting on people's pictures that I don't even know on Instagram, and I'm like, oh my god, you look amazing. And then I'm like, don't
I
even
don't know
that
you.
girl's then the next day, yeah, literally never even met you. And the next day, that girl, I'm like, that's so embarrassing, Emily. Um, yeah. But anyway, some interesting stories from you there. I mean, I've definitely been in some weird and wonderful situations when
Yes,
I've been drunk. But I'm better than I was, and I think that's definitely. I think it's definitely a maturity thing. I think you get to like a certain point in your 20s, a lot of people anyway, and you just kind of like reassess what your priorities are, and laying in bed hungover on a Sunday is no longer a priority. Like you want to be organizing your life, you want to be outside, you want to be enjoying the day that you have off, because it's like you're working 5 days a week, so those like that full day off is like very precious.
yes.
And I think that we realize that more as we get older.
Mm.
So obviously, one of the things that you've realized is one of the things that you've gained since being sober is your Sundays and your Saturdays because you're not hungover. Um, but what are some of the other things that you've gained from sobriety, or like
Definitely,
big changes that you've seen?
definitely. Actually, before I do, I want to say on that one when you said about getting the Sundays, because someone said to me, and it kind of makes sense actually, that if you go out once every 2 weeks and then, pardon me, sorry, if you go out like once every 2 weeks and then you're hungover at, to a point you've lost a day once in the 2 weeks over a course of a year, that sort of like will add up to like 26 days, I think, which is almost just shy of just under, a couple of days under a month, maybe about like, like 5 days less than a month. And they're saying if you do that over a year, you've technically lost a month of the year to hangovers. And I was just like, and I was like, in my mind, I was just like, that's not true. Like you're lying. And I just thought,
But that's not
got the
even
couch.
taking into account that sometimes I was going out on a weekday and being hungover after I was doing some after work drinks, and I'd be hungover on a weekday. So I might have been I've probably wasted 2 months of a year.
I
And
know.
then
And I
that
was,
doesn't take into account holidays and like extended periods of time off. Like university, I was hungover all the time.
mm. I know it was
Yeah.
fascinating to hear that. But the original question, anyway, I would say that the weirdest thing that I've sort of, I say the weirdest one, the unexpected one that I thought wouldn't have happened was I've actually sort of like gained more friends from going sober, which I feel like a lot of people say when you go sober, become very antisocial, become quite introverted, so you don't go out as much and all this. And I found it to be the complete opposite. Because when I first started, I was quite introverted, like going out all the time. It was not uncomfortable, but it wasn't sort of like the thing I sort of want was like diving into wanting to do, go out until 2 a.m. surrounded by drunk people when you're there sober, sitting on a glass of tonic water or something.
Yeah.
But I always found that, or I still find that when I go out and meet people now and I'm completely sober, I think that, or I know, is that the connections you're making are much more genuine. You're able to be your full self. You're not like sort of hiding behind any sort of like fake self confidence after a couple of beers. And like you said, with like the girls' bathroom, I've never been into a girls' bathroom, by the way, so I'm not saying that I've got the experience in doing that. But the sort of like equivalent for guys is probably like, you see a lot of guys like a sort of like a smoking area, or, like sit where you like bonding and all this. And like you see a friend you haven't seen for ages, and then, or you just like go to sort of like a house party and just met like new people for the first time. And then they may see you then like a couple of days or weeks after, and then see you a drink a day, you like a different person, they meet you, and then it's like almost like they're meeting a different side of you. Whereas when you're doing it sober, they're always meeting that sort of same person. And I think people do actually respect you more, I find, when I've sort of introduced myself and I've been quite like open and sort of like got like that new self-confidence now when I'm meeting people when I'm out, especially in like social situations where people drink and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sober, like I don't drink. And I think people almost like not look up to you, because I feel like that would like fuel my ego way too much to think that everyone's like looking at me as this sort of god. But it's definitely people I believe do, because I would be like that when I was drinking. Someone be like, so I'd be like, I want to be like you. But it is, I do
Same.
find that like,
Same.
but a lot of people do sort of like take, and they, and I think then a lot of people will then feel quite safe and comfortable around you because you're not going to be, Larry or shouting. You're quite level headed. So a lot of people feel like, and even when you're talking to people, then you're not sort of like slurring your words, like, you're going off on all different tangents of a story. You have to stick to it. And people sort of, and I do feel like the whole I think it just comes down to just being your full authentic self. When you're meeting people, you're not faking it behind, like a couple of beers, a couple of drinks. You're not sort of like going like hyper, sort of like, hyper ego inflated with, going all out with, like shouting and screaming, like, yeah, let's go, boys. Hey. Like you're just yourself, and people will see that. And I think, people do are much more receptive to people who they can tell are just being themselves rather than being someone that they're not. And that's been one of the best things about going sober, is the amount of people that I've become friends with over the sort of year.
Wow. And do you feel like that you've the time that you've gained, do you think that you've replaced that with anything else? Like any new hobbies, or um have you done anything with that time?
Yes and no, really. So I feel like that
Oh,
over, well, yes, I kind of like got into like running and like exercise a bit. So I sort of ended up losing a bit of weight since I gave up alcohol. Not a lot. I would even like consider myself, when I was drinking, to be someone who had sort of weight, but I think the best way to describe it was I was more like round around the edges, probably like the most appropriate term to describe it. So I sort of like slimming myself down a bit, and I sort of got into running, which is very nice. I was able to, and I feel like there wasn't anything I specifically sort of put my attention to in this newfound time, but I was adding more time to the things in my life that I couldn't give that extra time to. So I was able to sort of spend more time with my family and friends rather when I was going out with them, because I wasn't having to go home early or, see my family. I wasn't hungover seeing them, so I couldn't spend that extra time with them. So I was able to put more time and energy into them, like cooking. I love cooking, so I was able to do more cooking because I wasn't sort of, half gazed trying to cook, or, a bit hungover. You just want some sort of pasta and sauce, so a bit more energy into that. And work as well. So I was able to put much more energy, effort into work, because as you can probably agree with, when you get older, the hangovers don't just go from a Sunday, then you wake up Monday morning, you're completely fresh. They do sort of have a
no.
tendency to go
It
on
take
into the
it-
week.
like what even is that all about? I feel like they last like 4 days for me. Like
I know.
it's the lack of sleep that your body can't deal with, I think. And like you're not getting like full REM sleep when you're
Yes.
drinking. So I it takes me forever. It's just it's crazy. Because
I know.
when I was younger, I'd bounce back and I'd be out like 2 or 3 days in a row at uni. How
Hmm.
did I do that?
It's mad
How
though,
did I
isn't
do
it?
that?
And even my parents, I find that they're like much older. I say they're much older. They probably hate me if they heard me saying that. But they're like sort of like late 50s. My dad's just turned 60, and they like could go out to the pub on a Friday night, sink quite a few drinks. They'll be like up on a Saturday morning, completely fine.
Yeah, what
And
is
I'm
it
just
that
like,
about? My
how
parents
are
do
you
that.
doing that? Like, what is there like a
Yeah,
way that you like sort of like your hangovers like get progressively worse, and you sort of reach a certain age, and it sort of like goes, you like sort of like reset
you
or
get better
something,
again.
or they just so used to them that they sort of just don't. Maybe they're just constantly in this hungover state from all the drinking that they're doing, that they don't even notice it. But they just seem like, when I would like go out to a pub and drink the same as them, I'd be like written off for the day. But they'd be fine. They'd be up in the morning, walking the dogs. My dad would be out in the garden doing this. My mum would be up with the horse doing whatever, and I'm there. It's like, how you're like in your
How?
50s, I'm in my 20s, and I can't even get out of bed, and you're doing all this.
Yeah,
It should be the opposite way around here. Something's not quite worked out.
yeah. No, I completely agree. My parents are exactly the same. I just don't. Maybe parents are just built differently.
Yeah,
Um, they've had to raise children, so that's probably why.
Yeah, their tolerance to
Maybe no
everything is
hangover
just
compares to that.
yes.
So how so like have you got any plans? Is this it? Are you like planning to stay sober forever? Like do you ever want to drink again?
I'd say so. I was saying it to one of my friends the other day because they asked about it because it's got to a year. And I was just like, well, yeah, I'm not like one of the sober people, who says, you have to give up alcohol to live a sober, you have to give up alcohol to live the best life. 'Cause I disagree with that. I think, like you said earlier, it's more about like a relationship with alcohol rather than going sober. But I do believe personally that, for me to live this much better life that I'm living, it has come down to not drinking alcohol. And I wouldn't necessarily, if I went back to alcohol, I wouldn't be disappointed in myself because I was thinking about it like not too long ago because I sort of started off just wanted to do 30 days and I sort of come to the full year now. So it's almost like you go out to run a 5K and then you end up completing an ultra marathon. It's almost like a bit like that with it. So if I do go
Yeah.
back to it, it depends the situation, I believe. Like, if it's like if I'm just going to the pub and I have a few drinks down there, I don't think that's like the best way to sort of like get back into it. But if it's like a special occasion, you're celebrating something big, you might want to have like a glass of, champagne or something like that. Then I feel like that would be more appropriate way to sort of like ease yourself back into it. Or I always said as well, like if I ever find myself down the Amalfi Coast in Italy, you can guarantee I'll
Oh,
have an Aperol Spritz in my hand. There is no doubt about that. No matter how far into the sobriety is, that is a
yeah.
guaranteed at all. And I've always said that to myself. That's like the one excuse I'll give myself. But other than that, I'm just like I just don't. And I've like managed to do everything. I've done Christmas, New Year, my birthday. I've done everything you could possibly do in a year. And even like before, like I went drinking, I also knew when it comes to stuff like grief and stress and all this, I would never be someone who would drink to get over that anyway. I was always had that sort of like consciousness that drinking is not the best way to get through this, so I would always stay away from it anyway. So I never had that sort of inkling when things would get bad in the last year that, oh, I should really have a drink or a pint to sort me out. I never had that mindset anyway. So I just feel like going back to drinking for me, I just don't want to. I just don't see, not that I don't see the point in it, but I feel like I've everything that I achieved in the last year. I just like to know that I could keep going with that and
And
we'll see how far it
have
goes.
you got any tips on how to deal with social situations, like when everyone's drinking and you really want a drink? Is there anything in specific, like in particular, that you would think could help someone in that situation to not have a drink?
Yeah, I feel like the best is to like stick to the 0% beers. I think because I feel like a lot of what I was finding when I go out to a pub and all this, and like what would you sort of drink? It was more so I was finding it was not so much the alcohol I was missing. It was more the ritual of sitting there with a drink and drinking the drink rather than actually what's in the drink. I just felt like even though I was sitting there with a non-alcoholic beer, it had like 0% or like a 0% bottle of Heineken Peroni, or sometimes places do like non-alcoholic stuff on draft. I think it was just more so as long as you got like that thing there, that ritual of a non-alcoholic drink that looks like an alcoholic drink. I think that's what makes the biggest difference. You could say about, you gotta say to your friends, make sure they know what you're going through, make sure you're comfortable, find a good place. So I just feel like it just comes down. My this is like obviously only my opinion. People may say completely different, but I think as long as you got something there to, replace that alcoholic drink with, even if it's 0%, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I've heard it a lot. When I went through a stage of not drinking, like I was just trying, like some of the alcohol-free beers are so good. Like they
Mm,
taste exactly the same as beer.
yeah.
And even some of the wines and like I've done like alcohol-free prosecco.
Oh
Like there's
wow.
so many options now that I
Yeah.
feel like you can make yourself believe that you're drinking and like give yourself that sort of placebo effect almost.
Yeah. What's the
So
wine like? Because I've heard mixed review, not mixed reviews, but people often say
The
it's more
wine,
worse than.
yeah. I mean, I'm love wine, so
Yes.
for me to drink non-alcoholic wine is a bit. It doesn't feel right. I actually stopped drinking alcohol for a bit in Australia, and yeah, I drank an alcohol-free wine, and I don't remember where I was now. But it tastes very, very sweet. I think it's got a lot of sugar in it, actually,
Oh,
to be
is it?
honest. It kind of just tastes like a really sweet, soft drink. But if you put it in a wine glass, and I don't know, it's for me, it's just having the wine glass and like that whole experience because I enjoy that. And I've like grown up around my family, like have wine at dinner. And I feel like it's very much, yeah, a ritual for me to do those things actually.
Yeah,
Um, so just making myself believe that it's a wine, and if it looks like a wine and it's in a
yeah,
nice
yeah.
wine glass,
I know. I know
but
people that
it's
disagree. Oh, sorry.
sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was gonna say because I know people disagree with saying, "Oh yeah, well you're defeating the point of staying away from alcohol."
Yeah,
You're still. And I'm like, well, a lot of us don't. We're not given. It's just it's well, this works. It's like it may not be the
it
healthiest.
works
It's like,
exactly.
but it works. So it's like, well, just because it may not be the best one for a lot of people, well, for someone who's just getting over alcohol because they haven't actually got a problem with it, they just want to just reduce their alcohol intake. It's like, yeah, go for it. Have a zero
Yeah,
percent beer. Keep to the ritual of it. Don't like exasperate yourself from any sort of social setting because of it. Keep doing what you're doing, but replace it with a 0% beer or
just
a wine or
yeah, exactly, and they taste very much the same. So I think if that's like that is how I managed to get through that month where I wasn't drinking. Like I
yeah.
had to utilize like alcohol-free wines and proseccos, and like if
Mm,
I was in a social situation. So
yeah, yeah.
um but I think it depends on your level of like sounds like you like didn't maybe like wasn't it was more of a go out and binge drink for you rather than actually enjoy like
Oh
the
yes,
drink.
that's
Yeah.
completely correct.
So anything else that you think would be like a final thing that you like take away of what you've gained from sobriety? Obviously you've mentioned some really good things, but is there anything else that you think might give a listener who's thinking about going sober that final push to sobriety?
Yeah, I think so. I think the main thing is, I think what a lot of I talk about on more so with my sobriety and when I put it out on Instagram is more pretty much what you mentioned earlier, we talked about already, is like that sort of relationship with alcohol. Because there are a lot of sober influencers out there who do constantly push that narrative of in order to live that happy, healthy life, you have to cut out alcohol. There's no way you can live a good life with any sort of alcohol in your life. And I fundamentally disagree with that on lots of levels because like you've proven, and quite a lot of my friends have proven that people are able to maintain that healthy relationship with alcohol, and especially in sort of like today's like sort of like health and wellness sort of like trending society, that everything that anyone does almost gets like nitpicked apart, and all like the tiny little micro details of what's unhealthy, what is healthy, and then someone says this is bad for you because it contains this, and someone will actually say, well, no, that you know protein enzyme that it actually contains is actually
Yeah,
really good for you. But if you and it's just like it becomes exhausting sometimes
it's so
listening to all
exhausting.
of this. And I think especially when the sober community itself is that we shouldn't just be celebrating people going sober completely and their fantastic achievements they do with it. It should be celebrating any step anyone takes to go sober, whether that is just maybe not drinking on a weekdays and only sticking to the weekends. That's still you're taking the steps to go sober, and that's fantastic. Or maybe you're just going to be someone who's not going to drink at home anymore. You're only going to drink when you're going out. That is fantastic. Both of them. There's so many more examples to go through, and it's all fantastic. And as a sober community, we should be pushing that more rather than just saying, no, well, you're not sober, fully sober, so what's the point? It's like, no, people are taking real drastic measures to implement a great life for themselves, and that should be celebrated. It's like when people go to running, for example, we should be celebrating everything, whether it's a 5K or a marathon. Any sort of achievement is worth celebrating. Otherwise, you end up pushing ourselves to these like horrible extremes in everything we do. And the dialogue and the narrative around it becomes very toxic, where we should just be like, well, as long as you're doing something good, that deserves
Yeah,
celebrating.
yeah, yeah. I love that, and I think it's so so true. And you're right. There is just so much noise in social media, and I did a post about this recently
Yes.
on my TikTok, and like one thing in particular is like running a marathon, and we're told to run a marathon, but then if you run a marathon, like your body's never going to be the same after a marathon, but yet run a marathon because you should do it before you're 30 and it's a huge achievement. And it's like
Mm.
it's the same with alcohol. It's like, oh, drink red wine. It's good for your blood pressure and
Yes,
it
like
reduces cancer. But
antioxidants
don't
it
drink
contains
red
and
wine. It gives you cancer and it's terrible for you and you're gonna have a stroke and da 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 da. And it's like I think you're right. You've got to do what feels right for you. And if you're at a point in your life where you're drinking and it's genuinely ruining your quality of life, then you should really consider, um, you know, whether or not drinking alcohol is right for you. But yes, but maybe it's not a case of going sober immediately, and that doesn't mean you're a failure. Just taking those small steps, like you said, and celebrating those small wins, and just because, um, and a win, I think people like you said, and I really like what you said because somebody who drinks a lot, not drinking on a Saturday night is huge,
yeah,
but to them, they might be thinking, "Oh, but I still drink, so that's not a big achievement." But it is a
exactly.
huge achievement, and we should celebrate that. And I think social media makes us think that if we're not completely sober, or if we're not running marathons, or if we've not started a business, or if we're not working for some huge corporate company, that we're a failure. And that's just not the case. Like we need to celebrate what we're doing, and because everyone's situation is completely unique. So I really like that message.
Exactly, yeah, because I've read so like especially like this, like you said, like there's so much that goes into it, especially like the working one as well. People are like, oh, if you work 9 to 5 for your boss, then you're gonna be locked into the matrix, like go full on like almost Andrew Tate sort of like was. And I'm just like, well, a lot
Yeah,
of people actually quite like working 9 to 5. Personally, I'm quite happy, being sort of semi self-employed-ish, but like a lot of people, they like the security of it. They like knowing that they're gonna have that fixed amount of money every month. They know like they can have the time off. They know what to expect, and some people like that because then when they sort of maybe take some time off work, they don't have to worry about anything. Whereas if you're self-employed, it's all swings and
yeah,
roundabouts. There's positives and negatives. But someone who's working 9 to 5, they may actually be really happy in it. So to go to them and say you're wrong, you're working for this
yeah,
big, you're only making other people money. It's just like, well, if they're happy, they're happy. They might look at someone who's
yeah,
self-employed and thinking, well, why are you doing this for? You're going to lose out so much time with your family and friends. You're in meetings. You're going to be doing this. You're going to be doing that. And it's just like, as long as you're doing what you're doing is, as long as what you're doing is something you're happy doing, then carry on. As long as you're not
exactly.
like harming anyone on the way, that's an extreme. But when it comes to career, as long as what you're doing you're happy with, then don't worry if you're not self-employed or that you're not 9 to 5. Just do
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a lovely way to end the podcast.
it.
A very positive note.
It is, isn't it?
And really lovely to talk with you and
And
hear
you
about
too.
your sobriety journey. And I do believe that if somebody's listening to this and maybe has some struggles with their relationship with alcohol, that they may potentially reassess after hearing some of the great things that you've achieved over the past year, and how you've achieved it as well. So thank you so much.
Thank
I
you for
hope
having me,
you have
Emily.
a good day at work,
I hope so.
and I'll speak to you soon.
I shall speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.